Are you tired of consuming the same old content? Bored by the lack of variety? Stick around. Maybe this podcast will help.
You are listening to Fighting Together. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our daily episodes.
In today's episode of Fighting Together, I am going to talk about new places, going to new places. Yeah, it's something that could be scary. It's something that could be rewarding. And in the different stories that I will have for you in this episode, we'll go through all those emotions. My name is Tafadzwa. Welcome to another episode of Fighting Together.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, depressing news, and statistics. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
Later on in the episode, I am going to talk about the children of Israel and their journey to a new place and the spies that they sent out to scout out the new place. But we're not yet there. For now, let's talk about traveling within our own modern world. I remember a time that I was doing a nationwide campaign. It was part of my job. And as part of my job, I wasn't just on the design side of things. I also had to travel around the country, making sure that the advertising campaign was being run properly, blah, 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 Yeah. And during this nationwide campaign, I got to see parts of my own country that I'd never seen. I got to experience certain things that were quite enjoyable. Normally I wouldn't have gone through all that travel, just by myself, out of the blue. But I regretted never having done such a thing on my own, the thing of just getting into a car, getting onto a bus and just going to a destination. But I guess it's hard to pull yourself out of your daily routine and make that effort. And sometimes it's not as expensive as we think it might be. I remember this one place during this nationwide campaign. We went to this hidden place. Well, it was kind of hidden in the sense that we were on a highway. Then we saw a road sign that said something accommodation. I forgot the name of the place. I forgot but we took the detour, went out of the highway and started going deeper and deeper into the forest until we came across this place, which had thatched buildings, different types of accommodation that were waiting for us there. And there were no people there because they were in their off season, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Or maybe because we don't get tourists that dig deep into the country. You know how people can be. When people go to a certain country, they more or less end up using the same facilities that were used by other tourists. And there are always these hidden gems, these places which provide good services but cannot be found, maybe because they don't have a strong enough online presence or whatever, So there we were in one such place. I'm sitting there and thinking, wow, this is a really nice place. The air is fresh and clean, and there were zebras and giraffes walking about the place. And if I'm to look for the place online, I think I won't even find it. And even their road sign, the sign that kind of directs you to them, it wasn't as prominent as one would want it to be. If we were driving fast, we would have probably missed it, So here we are, hidden gem, zebras all over the place, giraffes walking about, and I'm thinking, wow, I really enjoyed my stay there. when we got there, the place was more expensive than we could afford. Because, when you're on a contract and you're doing work and, things are budgeted for, you have to stick to the budget. Otherwise, you won't be able to finish the entire thing, because we were going to be staying in multiple places, in multiple cities, and you have to stick to the budget. But while we were there, we were like, this is good, but we can't afford it. So we have to pull out of here and go into the inner city and find a little place without any zebras that we can afford. But the manager was there, the lady, she was like, oh no, let's sit down. Talk to me. What are you looking for? How long do you plan to be here? Who are you? And that kind of stuff. We talked with her, and essentially she was like, let's do something within your budget. She quickly threw together something that was within our budget, and next thing you know, we were staying there. And I remember the comfort, everything was just good, the food was amazing, and I didn't want to leave, but we had a nationwide tour to go to, and we had to keep doing work. But that was amazing. Later on, we met up with the rest of the crew. They had all split up and went to different directions, looking for different types of accommodation. Some people were looking for accommodation that allowed them to save money. Others were looking for accommodation from relatives, I suppose. I don't know, Yeah, and we met up together, and out of everyone in that entire company, I think we had the best accommodation. We had the most to say, and it just came out of going to a new place. And I don't know. I know it's hard, but if possible, just try and do it. Try and stretch yourself beyond your usual routine of things that you think you can afford, or things that you think are what you should just keep doing, Yeah, let me conclude this segment by motivating you even further. I have got 2 posters in front of me. Now, these posters are specific to Zimbabwe, but still, it doesn't mean your own country, your own city, your own location, your own part of the world doesn't have similar hidden gems. For these 2 posters, I will have to state that I wasn't sponsored to talk about these things, and I'm just picking them up because they make me feel so good to know that such things are there, but we have no time for them, I guess. Yeah. The first poster is essentially talking about a day trip, taking the day out of your usual routine. And they're saying on 20 March, what day is it on 20 March? Today, it's a Saturday. So on a Saturday, 20 March, for $25 American per person, including braai, you can go out and do a field shooting. I've never held a gun. I don't know what kind of guns you'll be using. But for me, it's definitely worth the $25 that they are charging to go and do field shooting and hiking and go to some waterfalls and swim in a waterfall. I mean, swimming is fun. I can't swim, but if I could swim, I can definitely imagine that swimming at a waterfall is up there with some of the top swimming experiences that someone can have. Yeah, so there's waterfalls, there's slingshot games. Slingshot. Oh yeah, wow. I hope it's a safe slingshot, because I know there's the human slingshot where you can put a person on the actual slingshot and then they be thrown. Yeah, sounds terrifying. I think you'd need a bungee cable so that you I don't know, dangle somewhere. I have no idea. Anyway, there are slingshot games which will be there, and crossbow archery. Transport from Harare and accommodation in Vumba is also available upon request. So all of that, including braai, including the shooting, including the hiking and so on, within a day. you would have gone through all those experiences and enjoyed yourself. Now, what I've learned, and this is from my own personal experiences, is that when you do such a thing, when you go through such a thing, the networking and the people that you get to see will be invaluable. Like, you can't put a price tag to the connections that will happen there. And sometimes it's not intentional. You don't go there saying, okay, I'm going to go there and get some connections. I am going to get those connections. It just naturally happens. You know, you meet a person there, and then next thing you know, you're talking and you realize you're in the same field, or you realize they're looking for a logo for their company, and you think, okay, I can do something for you because you're in the waterfalls and you're swimming, and you go, oh yeah, I can throw something together for you. Next thing you know, you get their phone number, you send them the design that you have done, then they want to thank you for this, or they want to pay you. You go over to their offices, and you realize this was some big tycoon person whom you weren't aware of because you met casually at a $25 thing that was happening, you know. And that's the thing about life. And I'm not saying it's going to be as immediate as that, but going to new places is something that's necessary for anyone in any field, for anyone of any age. You will be opened up to some new things that are relevant to you as an individual. Things that you could have never found, or I don't know, like when you're all alone sitting in your room like I am. Well, I'm not alone. I've got my dog, but you get what I mean. Yeah, you have this whole like little circuit that you're running around in circles, and going to these day trips breaks you out of the circuit and opens up a horizon that you have never dreamt of. Yeah, I think I've said enough in this segment. My hope, my dream in this podcast is to get you excited about the Bible. You'll see that later on. But for now, my other target is to also break you out of the routine, because we are stuck in a routine where we sit on the internet and look at COVID statistics and just get depressed about all the chaos and sad stuff that's happening around us, be it political, be it personal, and it's hard to pull yourself out of that place. Hopefully this podcast helps you. Hopefully this podcast brings a little bit of sunshine into your day. Yeah, in the next segment, I've got a whole lot of other things waiting for you. My name is Tafadzwa, and this is Fighting Together.
This podcast was made possible through your donations, prayers, love, and continued support.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, and depressing news. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
How is your day going? I hope you're having a good day, and I hope whatever you're going through is something that you realize you can overcome. Whatever challenges you might be facing, you have to have that faith and belief that at some point in time, it shall be a thing of the past. You can look back at it and say, whoo, I went through that, but I made it through. My name is Tafadzwa. You are still listening to Fighting Together, where we fight through different things. Right now, we are trying to fight through this thing that stops us from going to new places, or this thing that stops us from trying new things, you know. Yeah, we're trying to fight against that thing. I don't know what it is. Later on, like I've said, I've hinted it before, but I need to kind of throw it in here again. I'm going to dig into the Bible and talk about this new place that the children of Israel were about to go to, and they sent spies to look and scout in advance, you know, like a scouting party, to kind of check out the place. I'll get into that story. It's a good story. It's something that I will be reading in two languages, English and Shona, but we are not yet there. Let me take you back to the previous episode of Fighting Together.
You are listening to Fighting Together. Don't go anywhere.
I talked about letters in the last episode that I recorded, and in that podcast episode, I forgot to mention one thing, which was there was a time when I think I was in boarding school, and while there, I wanted to send a letter. I had my stamps, but I didn't have envelopes. So without an envelope, I was thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? I really, really desperately need to send a letter home. You couldn't just call. We didn't have phones. We were at a boarding school. You would spend 3 months there. And in those 3 months, there were some very specific days that your parents could visit you. And those days, in a space of 3 months, you would get 3 days, 1 day per month. So if your parents were unable to visit on that one particular day, that was it, done. Yeah. And in this story now, one of those upcoming rare days was about to be upon us. I don't know. The day was coming up quickly, and I needed to send a letter requesting certain items that I desperately needed, But the thing is, I have stamps without an envelope. I then sat there and I'm worried, I'm stressed because time is running out. Then I thought of doing something that I'd never thought of, I said to myself, let me try and make my own envelope. I know when I say it now, it sounds like a simple thing. I mean, it's simple, So what? Yeah, so I sat there, grabbed a piece of paper and essentially started gluing it together with glue that I borrowed. And now I'm just like trying to make an envelope of some sort. And then I put my letter in there. And then and this is just normal paper that I used. And I folded it up and made it into some kind of envelope. And then I put my stamp there and the address, and I was just hoping and praying that when the people at the post office see it, they're not going to chuck it on the side to say, nope, we don't allow this, Yeah, I hoped and prayed that it would get through. Next thing you know, visiting Sunday, the one visiting day you get a month, came around the corner. It arrived. The day is there. Today is the day. My parents are there. And then I asked them, did you get my letter? What do you know? They did. It was not in a proper envelope. It was in a piece of paper stuck together with glue, and it passed through the entire mail system and got all the way home safely without anyone going, what on earth is this? Yeah, and I know when I say it, it sounds like a very simple thing, Like, is that what you're all excited about? The fact that you grabbed glue and made your own envelope out of regular paper and the letter still went through, But that's the thing. The letter and the envelope aren't the point of the story. The main objective that I was trying to get at was the mindset that I had to break myself out of, Sometimes it can be like that for you. In a situation, you could think, I am not the kind of person that deserves to go to a lodge which has zebras and giraffes walking about, because you assume that it's expensive. You assume that it's reserved for tourists that are coming from America. You assume a lot of things, and you'd be surprised that some of these places, maybe not all places, but you'd be surprised that a lot of places actually have different rates. They have a rate for local people where the price is much, much lower. And then they have a price point for people that are coming from stronger economies. Yeah, sounds crazy, but that's the thing. And I'm just hoping you will break yourself out of whatever mental thing that's blocking you from realizing that what you want to do is possible, Yeah, and I have a lot more stuff coming up, but I had to kind of throw in this envelope thing. After the break, after this short break, we have more stuff that's coming, but this break is going to be a musical one. I'll have some music playing. Don't skip through it. Just take it all in, Relax. And I have to introduce the group that's going to be singing. It's a group that I keep trying to get people aware of, It's a group of people who are members of the Church of Christ here in Zimbabwe. And those people come together every now and again and they form a group called Muzambangwena. So here's one of their tracks. I hope you are going to enjoy it, and I hope you're going to look out for their music. Look for them on social media. Muzambangwena Choral Group.
Pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, tireke kufira muchitema, pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, baba torai mukana uyu mupindirewo. Pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, atini kufata chitambura, pindirai o baba, pindirai o baba, baba torai mukana uyu mupindirewo. Hishetari sahi baba, vichidikivo parara, nezirwere baba, zakango siyana, shura matongo baba, yatipeta ishi, baba torai mukana uyu mupindirewo.
This podcast was made possible through your donations, prayers, and continued support.
One crazy thing about COVID and what's happening is that the information is not moving properly, Whether it's information about the vaccine or information about what you can do and what you can't do. And there's just chaos and confusion and fake news and just everything is messy, proper messy. Yeah. And I know some of you may be thinking, oh, wow, it's nice that you talked about having some fresh air and going to these isolated tourist lodge, remote places, kind of destinations. Nice, but I guess we have to wait until COVID is over until we can do that, which is actually not true. If you read the statement that was released when we had our recent lockdown, when we kicked off our recent lockdown, they listed things saying beer halls are closed, bars, bottle stores, restaurants, all of those places are closed. But if you look through it, they also then went on to say that tourist facilities and national parks to operate as before, subject to health precautions. So national parks and tourist facilities were actually being said they can continue working. But what you then find is that they could have regulations which are we can only book X amount of people, or we are going to have a person in room number 1, and then the next person is going to be in room number 7, and then the next person is going to be in room number 14, or something like that. I'm not giving an actual literal example, just as a a little something, I don't know, rough example. Yeah, and that's how they're operating. And once you're out there, you'll find that the spacing and distancing between people in a national park is actually better than the spacing and distancing that people have in the flats and homes that we live in. Obviously, people have different kinds of homes in different types of suburbs. But if you were to take a chunk of people from my neighborhood and put them in a national park, I think they would have a lot more space there than they have here in the neighborhood, while we are busy walking up and down and while we are busy trying to buy from the same shop, Yeah, crazy. Not to say that once you're in a national park, then COVID is over. You ban your masks and throw away your sanitizers. Like I read, it says tourist facilities and national parks to operate as before, subject to health precautions. Obviously, depending on the country you're in, you have to check up with your own country and what they're doing, and you kind of have to call them ahead of time, which is going to be hard because some of them are quite hidden. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, this is all about going to new places, and ultimately, the point of this episode is to reach to a point where I'm going to talk about the children of Israel and this new place that they were going to. But before we get there, I thought we should pass through all these different stops where I talked about me doing something new, which was making an envelope out of regular paper. And then me talking about us exploring new places. I mean, I had no idea that I qualified to sleep at one of these fancy tourist lodges, because it was expensive and we were about to get into the car and U-turn, but it being off season and the manager being the nice lady that she was like, no, take my number, take my personal number. Anytime you're in the area, come back here, stay here. We can negotiate a package suited for you. It's no problem. I wouldn't mind doing that because we need more people knowing about these places, and we would love to have more locals experiencing your own zebras, your own, not to say that these animals are meant to be seen only by people who are flying in from far away continents, Yeah. Anyway, like I said, my name is Tafadzwa and you are listening to Fighting Together. Before we move on to the final segment, before we dive into the Bible, I want to read one more poster for you. It's right in front of me right now. And does it have a date? 1 to 3 April. Then 3 to 4 April. Yeah, so it has a date. So it's great. Unfortunately, if you're not in Zimbabwe, it might not apply to you. Unless you want to get on a plane, land in Zimbabwe, and take the quarantine days before you. I don't know if there's enough time for you to do all those things. Yeah, because I always try and make this podcast as globally applicable as possible. But unfortunately for this particular episode, because I wanted to get people into new places, unfortunately I can only focus on the places that are within my reach. So, yeah, Zimbabwe, I guess. Like I said, let me read from this thing. This thing is talking about inviting people so that they can come for 3 days and 2 nights of camping, And a lot of people will probably then think, camping, that's something that tourists are supposed to do. It's not for everyone. But that's the thing, it is for everyone. And you'll be amazed about the new opportunities that can open up in your life from the networking, from the people you meet there. Because once you get there, it's not just going to be you. There's going to be some random person who came from I don't know where, and you're going to be spending 3 days with this person. They will have their own tent there. You will have your own tent there. And next thing you know, you get talking. You get to know more about each other. Even after that, you're going to have a connection that could later become something else, whether it's a business type thing or I have no idea what it will become. But this comes out of going to a new place, And the children of Israel, like I said, they were in this place, Egypt, where they had been for a long time, for generations and generations. And if you remember correctly, they got to a place where they essentially said, you know what? enough is enough. We want to go back to Egypt. And they were telling this to Moses because they were thirsty, because at some point they were hungry, and every now and again they would go to Moses and say, if you wanted us to die in the desert, you should have told us, and we would not have left Egypt, because we were better off at the hands of Pharaoh than we are in your hands if this is what you have in store for us, They repeatedly rebelled against Moses, because they felt like, no, this is not what we were promised. So going to a new place could be something that's very difficult physically because you don't know where the place is, or physically because you are like, I don't want to get up from a chair. Yeah, but it's something that could potentially change your life in a manner that you can't expect. Let me continue reading some of the stuff that's there. So the thing that's on this poster, it's like $99 per person, and you get 3 days and 2 nights in Nyanga. And while you're there, all the stuff that you will be able to do includes canoeing, horse riding, and a whole bunch of mountain trails and bonfire evenings. A bonfire sounds very simple, but it's an experience in itself. Just reading that bonfire evenings reminded me of a time when it was me and some friends of mine in Durban, and we were at a church camp. I just remember, it's so visual and so graphic. The memory of it is stuck in my mind. Us sitting there, the fire was there, and there was one of our friends who was teaching us how to prepare bread, like some monks who used to make their own bread without yeast in it. And he just went through the entire process, and the bread was delicious. I know, it sounds like, what on earth is Tafadzwa talking about? Yeah, but you have to know that this was an experience that was made so special, not because of my own experiences, but because of the combination of the random people that were there, While you're there at the fire, you have someone who is an expert at storytelling. You have someone who has something that they'll bring to the fire. You have everyone will bring something different, whether it's physical or not physical. That fire can be something that, I don't know. Yeah, anyway. Let me just stop here. Bonfires are awesome, and they're not for tourists only, or for, it's unfortunate that we might think of it in that manner, but my name is Tafadzwa. After the break, we shall take all of this and dive into the Bible as we end today's podcast. I hope you're ready for the final segment that's coming up next.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, and depressing news. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
Get your Bible ready. The next segment has now begun.
Welcome back to the final segment of the day. This is Tafadzwa, and you are listening to Fighting Together. I know in the previous segments I talked about $25 this, $99 that, and it's like, what? Yeah, depending on where you are, depending on the economy, you're probably thinking, wow, that's actually quite affordable. Or depending on the job you do, you are also probably then thinking, no, I don't have that kind of money on me. But that's the thing. We are always investing in ourselves without realizing it. If you take that $25 and you go buy yourself clothes, you've already spent it. But that's the thing that people want. They want to invest in stuff that they are sure of. Buying $25 worth of clothes is something that you're sure of because you walk into the shop and you know what clothes you want. If it was a pair of jeans, you already know that I will walk out of the shop with jeans, But then when it becomes $25 to go to this place that you have never been and experience this thing that you have never experienced, suddenly people are like, no, I don't want to do that. That's expensive. It becomes expensive because people don't know what they'll get out of it. They're not 100% sure who else is going to be there. They're not 100% sure what the experience is going to be like. And yet, it should be the other way around. It should be the other way around in the sense that because you're not sure what's going to come out of it, isn't it more valuable? Obviously, people love guarantees. If you had to say $25, then you go to this camp and, I don't know, Bill Gates is going to be there or whoever you want to have there. Suddenly, people then go, oh no, that's cheap, because they now have a guarantee that this person or that person is going to be there. Anyway, enough about that. I hope you've got your Bibles ready because now we are about to dig into the Bible and just conclude today's episode.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
Now, like I hinted before, this is the time when Moses was there and leading the children of Israel, and they are like leaving Egypt behind them. And like I've said, this episode is an episode about just going to new places, doing new things, breaking out of that thing that makes you believe that you can't do something, You can just take a piece of paper, glue it together, and have a perfectly acceptable envelope out of it. Yeah, let me read from Numbers chapter 13, verse 1. Now, there are some names in here that are quite difficult to pronounce, so pardon me in advance. You know how Old Testament names can be. They are quite, I would try my best. I will. But yeah, let me try and read Numbers chapter 13. The Lord said to Moses, send men to explore Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of their ancestors' tribes. I will also alternate and read in Shona. Tuma vamwe varume kuti vandosora nyika yeKenani yandiri kupa vaIsraeri. Tuma mutungamiri mumwe kubva kuridzi rumwe norumwe rwamadzitateguru avo. And later on in 3 it says, so at the Lord's command Moses sent these men from the desert of Param. All of them were leaders of Israel. Now, this next part isn't really necessary for me to read because it's a list of their names saying there was this person, that person, and it goes on for a bit from verse 4 all the way to verse 15. It's just names like Reuben, Simon, Judah, Issachar, Ephraim, Benjamin, and like it essentially says the name of the person and the tribe, and we don't need to read all that. Yeah, anyway, moving down to 16. These are the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land, the names that I skipped above. And but Moses gave Hoshea, son of Nun, the name Joshua. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he told them, go through the Negev and then into the mountain region. See what the land is like and whether the people living there are strong or weak, few or many. Is the land they live in good or bad? Do their cities have walls around them or not? Is the soil rich or poor? Does the land have trees or not? Do your best to bring back some fruit from the land. And then in brackets it says it was the season when grapes would begin to ripen. So already from what we have read, Moses is now saying, go out there, check out this land, okay? And come back with the report. Do they have walled cities? Is the soil good? The people strong? Are they weak? Just give us a full report of what you will find when you get there, And like it said above there, while we're sending them out, Moses and the rest of the tribe, rest of the people of Israel, they are in the desert of Paran. And they are essentially sending spies who, because I guess the spies will travel light, and if need be, they can run and be nimble and go through a land without being noticed, So they were meant to go out, get the report, look at the things, and then come back with some information, And that's the thing, 40 days later, they came back from exploring the land. Now, this is verse 25. I jumped down to verse 25. So 40 days later, they came back from exploring the land. So it took 40 days for them to go there, check out everything, see the land, see the fruits that are there, the type of soil, the type of tribes that are there. And after those 40 days, they then came back. But before we go any further than that, let me go a little bit up and read a part that you might enjoy hearing, and I will read this first in Shona and then in English. So it's verse 23. First in Shona, then in English. Vakati vasvika pamupata weIshikori, vakatema davi rimwe raiva nesumbu ramuzambiringa. Vaviri vavo vakaritakura nedanda pakati pavo pamwe chete namatamba uye namaonde. In English, that's verse 23. When they came to Ishor, this is the spies in the land, right? And when they came to Ishor Valley, they cut off a branch with only one bunch of grapes on it, right? So this is just one bunch of grapes. And how big was this bunch of grapes, you ask? Good question. Let's read on and see how big it was. They carried it on a pole between two of them. Now this one bunch of grapes required two of them to have a pole so that they can carry the weight of these grapes in size and weight. I can't imagine, They also brought some pomegranates. I hope I pronounced that right. And figs. That's why I'm always going back to my Shona Bible. So they called that valley Eshkol, which in brackets says bunch of grapes, because of the bunch of grapes the Israelites cut off there. Imagine how big do this bunch of grapes have to be. Like I've read, it says they called this valley. So of all the things in the valley, they didn't call this valley, the valley of mountains, or the valley of rocks, or the valley of the Golden River, or whatever else that might have been in the valley, whether it's trees, rocks, or mountains. No, they chose to call this valley the Valley of Grapes. Well, not the Valley of Grapes, rather, but Eshkol, which means bunch of grapes, I suppose, because in my Bible, the word is followed by brackets, which have the phrase bunch of grapes in it. So I suppose it might be a translation of that. Anyway, so looking at that, you just go, wow. When the ones that were waiting in the desert were sitting there and expecting them to come, I don't think you could foresee that the thing that's going to surprise us out of this land is the size of the grapes. That's the thing about going to new places. I've given you an example where we went to this fancy place and we essentially got there and thought, too expensive. Let us U-turn, go back into the inner city and look for something that's more within our wallet range. But to my surprise, the manager was there. Was like, oh no, let's sit down. Let's talk about what you want to do. Let's talk about what kind of stuff you're looking for and your budget. We'll break it all down and make it work within your budget. There's no need for you to drive all the way from here back to, though I think we were lucky in that sense. If you are ever deciding to go to a lodge, I think you should call them in advance. Yeah, but nonetheless, with us being as lucky as we were, it's something that came out of going to a new place, trying something that you've never tried before, and it's scary. But out of it, you can see the greatness of God, because sometimes when you're cooked up there, you think, oh, this is as good as it gets, or as high as it will go, or as wide or as deep as it can be. But if you can venture out and have the faith, there's so much more out there, And afterwards, you can come back and say, how great is God. I was carried through things I never thought I could overcome, challenges and obstacles I've never seen in my life. And through God, I was able to go through it all, But yeah, it comes out of just stepping into that new place with the confidence, and the faith that you need. Whew, and it's scary, eh? Let me wrap things up quickly now by going back into the Bible and reading what the spies had to say. Like I've said, the spies were sent out to look at this land and come back with the report, Yeah. 27, verse 27 of Numbers chapter 13. This is what they reported to Moses. We went to the land you sent us. It really is a land of flowing. It really is a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is some of its fruit. But the people who live there are strong, and the cities have walls and are very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. Pardon how I'm going to pronounce some of these tribal names. They are quite difficult, so bear with me. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites. This is me going into a new place, a place I've never been with the English language. But I will have faith that we can make it through this new section of the language with such complicated tribal names. Let me read those again. The Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites live in the mountain region, and the Kenites live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and all along the Jordan River. Caleb told the people to be quiet and listen to Moses. Caleb said, "Let's go now and take possession of the land. We should be more than able to conquer it." And that's the thing. Like I said, these things can be scary. This thing of going to a new place, whether it's mentally going to a new place in your mind or physically trying something new, it can be scary. It could be something new with your business. I don't know what your business is, but I'll simplify it down to, selling mangoes, or something new with your business as in coming online because you've never done your business online. Your business has always been a brick and mortar business. Such things can be scary, but there's an attitude I liked here, and I'll read it again. Caleb said, "Let's go now and take possession of the land. We should be more than able to conquer it." Now, this is a land where he has listed several tribes that are strategically positioned already. And he even went on to say, if you go back to verse 28, he said, "But the people who live there are strong, and the cities have walls and are very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there." Yeah, that's not encouraging at all. But with faith, he was like, we can do this. We can do this. Yeah, let me go down to verse 31 so that we can wrap up our reading. But the men who had gone with him said, "We can't attack those people." Now, these are the other spies who are now speaking against him, saying, "Dude, weren't you there? You were there with us. How can you be saying these things? Weren't you there with us? Did you not see the descendants of Anak there?" Oh my word. And now you're going on to say, we can do this? Let's continue. But the men who had gone with him said, "We can't attack those people. They are too strong for us. So they began to spread lies among the Israelites about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored is one that devours those who live there. All the people we saw there are very tall. We saw Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak and Nephilim. We felt as small as grasshoppers, and that's how we must have looked to them. They now started spreading lies about this whole thing. And like I've said, doing something new is something that's scary. It's scary in the sense that you within yourself might lack the confidence. But also, depending on who you consult, you might have that little bit of confidence stripped away from you because you consulted the wrong person, and this person is someone who's been there, mind you. So I'm saying, have the faith that God can be with you when you are going through whatever challenge you're going through, be it an illness that you think, oh no, I talked to this other person and they said, you're not going to come out of this. This is the end of you. Get your house in order because I saw my mother going through the same illness. Nothing is greater than God. And He has the power to do things that we within ourselves can't imagine, But we always limit God. We sometimes face an obstacle that we think, oh no, this is too big. I'm not going to pray about it because it's too big, I will give you something that I'll conclude with is a big obstacle that you think prayer cannot overcome as we now come to the end of this podcast. And this thing is corruption in our country. I don't know about where you are, but here in Zimbabwe, corruption is massive. It's everywhere. It's so everywhere that it's actually no longer corruption. It's the system. Corruption can become so strong that it becomes a system that's got its own employees and structures, corrupt structures. I'm not saying corrupt structures in the sense that the structures that are there are now corrupt, but I'm saying corrupt structures in the sense that corruption now has its own structures that it has created that are not the actual structures, It now has its own language, its own lingo, its own processes, so to speak, And if you're in such a place, you could just look at it and think, there is no way I can pray this out of my life or pray this out of my way, because whatever you want to do, whether it's a job application or a business application, or you want to go and get your driver's license, those structures have been set in place in all those departments. And someone will lack the faith because, like I said, 12 spies were sent out. And 11 of them were now like, dude, there is no way you can overcome. Don't you see the corrupt structures that were there? The walls of corruption that were there? The descendants of corruption that were waiting for you? And you have the nerve to say you can overcome. 1 out of the 12 people was saying, we can do this, My name is Tafadzwa. Don't let the walls that are in front of you make you think that God doesn't have the power to carry you over those walls. This is a podcast called Fighting Together. God willing, I will do another episode, and God willing, you will be there to listen to it. Thank you so much for tuning in.